Welcome back to the Break with Bros, and tonight we're going to react to the different Bengals draft grades. But yeah, I guess the overall sentiment is that most people thought that the Bengals had a bad draft, grade
A
wise.
bad draft. I think the consensus is that the Bengals had the worst draft.
Same difference.
Yeah, no, but the good news is that most people are wrong. So I feel good about it.
But I guess the way I feel about it is that it's not that most people are wrong or most people are right or whatever. It's just like, and not to say that the Bengals front office knows everything and they get everything right, but at the same time, they do have more information. They don't just like
More information than Luke Esterling of Athlon Sports.
Yeah, of course. And, I think the draft maybe over the last decade or so has really taken off. I think social media in general.
Well, and nerds like us, man.
Well,
we love the draft.
No, don't get me wrong. It's very fun to get into. I think it's a thing that brings people together,
Yeah.
It's just something
community.
Right. It's fun, and it's fun to speculate, and I think what adds to it is with the NFL, the draft matters more than other sports. You think of it like baseball, maybe the draft is not as important because you don't see the effect. But if you have a really good draft in the NFL,
yeah. I mean, I think you're saying two different things. Like the MLB draft, it's like the guys. It's just, I think it's super important to draft well in the MLB, but like it's separated, right? Because like usually guys that get drafted don't end up on the team for a while.
Well, that and most of them don't. I mean, I guess you could say the same thing. I guess, yeah, the impact is not as immediate.
Right?
Yeah.
But the NBA draft is pretty important too.
It can be if you get,
but only for like the first 5 picks. Like the NFL draft is like kind of the lifeblood of a team, right? Because like your 4th round pick matters, whereas like the NBA, usually only the first half of the first round makes an impact. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm just adding color to what you're saying for entertainment value.
Yeah, so I mean, people get really into it, and that's why it has really exploded. And I think it's just gotten to the point where maybe it's a bit obnoxious in terms of, I guess, people feeling that they have to be right. And I think too, the information that's available is a lot more advanced. Like those mock draft simulators have really changed the game.
Yeah, the mock draft simulators are awesome. We love them. There's more information, but also because there's more information, I feel like people take shortcuts. So, like us in particular, we like to use PFF, right? Mm-hmm. And it really impacts how we view things, right? So if if a player's not in the PFF 100, top 100 players, I don't even know who they are, right? Because I rely on them to filter it.
And I think we both feel the same way. We don't think PFF is 100% solid, but in terms of like top 100 prospects, they're generally like 75% correct.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. I mean, for people that don't know what they're doing like us.
Well, for sure. I mean, we don't have the resources, the time to do all the in-depth research, and neither do they. I think they have a lot of inside resources. I think they rely on a lot of connections.
Mm-hmm.
But I also notice if you keep up with PFF, and I think we have pretty closely the last couple of years, is that as the draft gets closer, you'll notice things update. Because, like, for instance, Walter Nolan, his value skyrocketed, especially 1 week towards the draft. And a few other players, they just kind of like went up the draft board where they've had to rank lower. Mm-hmm. Now, they did get a few rankings off a little bit, but for the most part, it's fairly accurate. But just a disclaimer, we don't think PFF is 100% accurate. It's just more or less a good baseline, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we like to use it. It's fun. It's great for fans, but it's the thing. Okay, here's the one thing that I find backwards about the draft grades, right? So like some website will put out a list of top 100, or some draft person will put out a list of their rankings, right? And then after the draft, people will grade the NFL team's draft, and they'll say, oh, well, the Bengals drafted Shamar Stewart too high because PFF had him listed as 20 and they picked him at 17, right? But it's like backwards, right? Because the people that are putting out the list are supposed to predict what the NFL is going to do.
Right.
So instead of saying that the people who just have some website were wrong, they say that the NFL was wrong, which I find to be hilarious,
and
right?
I was kind of getting to that. It's like we have all these resources now, and they're fairly accurate. So it's really easy to go through 100 different situations. You just keep doing the ones, and you can kind of figure out the players that are reachable to certain degrees, right? And I think what happens is everyone kind of falls in love with the player that they think the Bengals or what team they're or their favorite team that they want the player or them to pick. So they get into those, like, you know, you got to get this one, and then you kind of get disappointed. So it's like, I think we kind of felt that with the second and third round pick, but then once you start to really think about the picks and then you kind of hear their explanations, and it's kind of like, oh, okay. And I feel like, I guess why I said some people's takes or the grades are kind of obnoxious, because they don't take into account, like, again, they fall in love with their players, right? Their guys. Right. And then it's like, well, okay, well, could there be a chance that maybe you could go a different route and have the same results, or maybe have the same value, but from like a different lens? And I think that's what the Bengals did. If you really look at the situation like this, we both like the first round pick, so there was no. I think we were pretty thrilled. I think the majority of Bengals fans didn't see the vision. I think
we felt pretty amazing when they picked that pick. Like, I both liked it and I felt smart because they picked the guy that I wanted them to pick. So
I felt pretty good about the pick too, because I felt like I texted you this, that Shamar Stewart's gonna be one of those guys where people are gonna ask, how did he fall down to the 17 type player? And I think during the draft day, I think what's her name, Kay, she said the same thing. I can't think of her name, but she's
Kay Adams.
Yeah, Kay Adams.
There you go.
She tends to be pretty popular with the Bengals fans, but it was just a sign, you know. And she basically said the same thing. This was before he was drafted. She was like, I feel like you're gonna be one of those players where, you know, people are gonna wonder how did that person fall that far. And to me, you just got to get him in the right scheme, and it should have been kind of obvious that they were going to pick more defensive players earlier than later in the draft, with bringing in a new defensive coordinator. And he loves.
I mean, it wasn't obvious to me what they were going to do, but it makes sense looking back on it. I don't disagree.
Well, I'm just saying it should have been kind of obvious that with the first three picks, at least two of them were going to be defense, right? Whether it was first and second.
I mean, because when we drafted, I think the majority of the picks that we picked in the first three rounds were defense. I think we kind of went back and forth on who the first round pick should have been, because I really liked the idea of getting an offensive lineman in the first round and then doing defense second, third. But that's that. You want to look at these draft grades and kind of talk about it a little bit, the report card?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Okay, cool.
I was well, I think too with the defensive picks, the players that we picked they're going to be impact players, and they're versatile. You know, like I think with Al Golden, I think he pretty much said that they are going to play 4-3-4 and probably more of 4-3. So they got the linebackers that can do it now. And I think there's a lot of different combinations you can add Shamar Stewart in with those formations. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was a bad value at all, because I think the linebacker situation was more dire than what most people realized. I think the Bengals were out on Pratt once he asked for that trade. So I wasn't 100% clear, or I guess knew what they were going to do with that situation, because I thought maybe if the right player didn't fall to him, whatever, they would possibly keep Pratt. But I think they were pretty much out on him, and I think that was part of the reason why they got the linebacker in the second round was that there wasn't going to be a guy that you could put in like the starter that they're going to need later in the draft. I think that was their last guy at that point, because that other linebacker went early in the second round. The guy from UCLA.
First pick in the second round.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think the not really run on linebackers, but the quality of starting linebackers that you would want, probably an Al Golden defense, was not going to be there in the third round. So, but yeah, sorry. To the grades.
Okay, yeah. So I was looking at this a little bit while you were talking. So on the bottom it says this is the bottom row is the GPA by the Riders, right? And then these are the grades given to the Bengals by the Riders, and then this is the Bengals GPA, right? So the funny thing is, to me, 2.06 is the Bengals grade consensus, averaging, all these guys here. Is 2.06, right? And the lowest average grade given out by anybody was 2.32. So nobody liked. I think the story is nobody liked the Bengals draft, and then some people disliked it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's driving kind of the grade. So I mean, I guess that's a lot of people are lukewarm on Shamar Stewart, but there's that. I think it's funny though that the average GPA given out to these teams is relatively high by all the writers, right? So most people just give really high grades.
Yeah.
So they're just saying the NFL is good at being the NFL draft, I guess, right?
Well, in the reality, it should be the inverse, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be a much smaller percentage of hits throughout the draft than there are, hits than non-hits. But
the hardest grader is this guy here, this Thor Nystrom.
That, to me, looks more correct if you're being objective, right? Because it's like...
Right. Because Chad Reuter, I mean, he gave like a 3.44. Like, he was the easiest grader. These must be ordered in hardest grader to easiest grader, right? I just think it's funny.
Like, it kills me. Like, the Steelers got a good draft grade, which to be fair, I'm sure they had solid picks, but it's like they still didn't address the quarterback situation. And there were quarterbacks that they could have picked a bit earlier.
Well,
what is this?
This is one of our mock drafts
from last year. No, this is this year.
Yeah. I don't know. I hit a button. So I think that's maybe let's look at the details of good old Thor Nystrom's grades. So he gave Bengals a D-. So he thinks Shamar Stewart's a reach, and he believes he's a high floor, medium ceiling prospect. I don't even know what that means. What's a medium ceiling prospect? I guess Rashawn Gary. I thought Rashawn Gary was pretty good. No?
Well, if you look at his...
I'd take Rashawn Gary.
I guess based off of his measurements and traits, there was like another list. But most of the names on that list were pretty good. And there were like 10 players, and like maybe 2 of them were non-hits. So like... Yeah, I don't know. The problem with I have some of these, I guess reviews or whatever, they don't really go into detail like how he would fit within the actual defense of the Bengals, right? Or how Al Golden would use him. It's just a lot of it's just based off of like perception and what they can see on film, and that's another thing. It's like, how much film are they actually watching? And I'm sure they're watching full games, but
probably not much.
Do you not think an NFL scout is not watching every single game and watching practice film and all that different stuff.
I like this. His lack of suddenness side to side in part explains his feeble pass rushing output. The thing when we watched highlights of Shamar Stewart, the thing that jumped out to me is he moved really well. North to south, east to west. Dude was a wrecking ball, right? He went where he wanted to go, and he could move left and right as much as he wanted. Like I could see where people are saying he doesn't really, I don't even know what this means, but I think I do. Runs the arc. I mean, he doesn't seem like someone that does that, but I don't know if they was asked to do that or not. But my point is just, if he plays for the Bengals like he played at Texas A&M, I see that as like a really good draft pick. To me, he looks like he's going to be as productive as Sam Hubbard, like right out of the gate. And I think that's what this defense missed last year, was a guy on the edge that could play good run defense and generate a little bit of pass rush. Because, I mean, the Bengals have the NFL leading sacker from last year. If you put somebody on the other side of him that generates pressure, I mean, low sacks, yes. Pressure, he generates lots of pressure because the guy just moves tackles into the backfield, right? So I just think high floor for sure, and I think high ceiling as well. I don't think medium ceiling. I think that's stupid to say even.
Yeah,
I give floor a D- for using the term medium ceiling.
No, a lot of this is surface level scouting, if you even want to call that, or maybe analysis. Is like, again, they're not going into depth of like how the player is going to fit in the scheme. Like, when the first thing I noticed with Shamar Stewart, on top of everything that you said, is that his versatility, right? So he's going to fit within the defense, even if Trey Hendrickson doesn't sit out, or if he does, he can play in the inside. And then I also think he pairs well with the other defensive ends that we drafted, because if you look at some of the statistics towards the end of the year, when the defense started to turn around a little bit, they were starting to get more pressures and starting to get more sacks. So if you add Shamar Stewart on top of that, I mean, could you imagine a defensive line where it's Trey Hendrickson, Shamar Stewart, Osai, and then Murphy, like on a third and long?
Yeah,
like,
or
that would
even McKinley Jackson in there is one of the four with Murphy as well, or with Shamar Stewart as well.
Yeah,
because I think McKinley Jackson's really good at generating pressure in the gap. So
no, I think where this draft is going to make more sense, and this is just my high level analysis on my end, but just listening to all the interviews and hearing all the different scouts talk about why they picked the certain picks, I think people are forgetting that Al Golden, he likes to blitz. And I think we're going to have the capacity where we could probably put Shamar Stewart in really different positions to be able to blitz on the outside. Or that linebacker that we picked up. Actually, both of the linebackers are pretty good blitzers, but the one specifically in Clemson, the guy that we got from Clemson, he looked really dynamic, and I feel like you can have him blitz off the edge too, or outside of the defensive end, and then I feel like he's going to mix it up too with even Dax Hill, because I feel like he can do. There was moments where he was blitzing and he was coming up with a lot of tackles for losses or even sacks. So I think they're gonna, depending on who they're playing, I think they're gonna give the other offense a lot of different looks, and I think they have the different combinations to do that. Yeah, and I do get a sense that they're gonna play more 3-4 and 4-3, and that's why they drafted 2 linebackers.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other thing we got here is, I didn't like the value that Cincinnati got in his 3 slots after that. Having said that, I do believe they got a long-term interior starter, Dylan Fairchild. It's just like,
that's interesting because a lot of people didn't like that pick either.
But it's just like, you don't know if it's a reach or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, especially when you're talking about like third round, so you're talking like pick 100 plus, right? Who knows what the difference is between pick 100 and pick 140 with respect to all the other NFL teams, right? Because it only takes one team to like someone, and you're not talking about that much difference in terms of like the NFL like draft pick value chart, you know? So I just think there's so much noise in rounds 4, 5, and 6, day 3 picks, that it all just depends on the team. And I'm reading this, and it's really not that negative, and that's a D minus. So I'm gonna say that Thor is a little too tough on the Bengals.
Well, I mean, too, if you look at it, it's not, I think part of it was they didn't get a bunch of sexy picks. You know, there wasn't a lot of receivers or quarterbacks or some of those dynamic playmaking players.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of those players had, you know, like some of the tight ends, some of the running backs even had some of that buzz, some of the receivers.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe Shamar Stewart had a little bit more of a mixed bag. It seemed like people were either really high on him or really low, or not really not low, but had question marks about him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I look at the first 3 rounds and I see starters or players that are going to play a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think like this thing with Taj Brooks. Brooks is also one of the class's best backs in pass pro. That means he's going to play.
Yeah. Well, for sure. Like, I think he's going to play special teams. It, to me, would make sense if he did kick returns.
Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying, if you got a guy that can block as a running back, he's got good speed, right? He was like a 4.5 40 guy, but like on his RAS score, he was like super agile. So he just seems like a guy that can play. And, you know, my sense going into the draft was there were a lot of running backs, because I thought maybe the Bengals could even get a running back as an undrafted free agent. So I think the Taj Brooks pick is a really good pick, because I think they need like a back to add to the mix. And based on what I've seen from Taj, I think he could play right away.
Yeah, from when it seemed like most people were more impressed with the day 3 picks than anything. But especially Taj Brooks, like when you look into his stats, I think he had, was it 22 games in a row where he had at least 95 yards, I think. And if you just watch his highlights, he's like, he looks like a bowling ball. It's kind of crazy even to think that he was rated so low. And I don't even know if we watched his highlights or not.
No, we didn't, because he was not not considered a top running back pick. Yeah. But I think that there's just a lot of running backs in this class.
Yeah, it was really deep.
Which the thing I like about it is they picked with Chase Brown and with Taj Brooks, they're picking running backs towards day 3, which I think is the right thing to do with the makeup of this team. You know, you can't afford to spend a lot of cap space on running backs when you have so much cap space devoted to wide receiver. And you gotta save money somewhere.
I've been saying it through the whole draft. If they get a running back, I hope he's a good complement to Chase Brown. And this is, to me, what I was looking for. Because I think he's going to be a tank. I want to say he's 5'10", but he's like plays at 220. So I feel like he's going to be really tough on the short yardage plays. So yeah, I really like this pick, and their backfield looks like because they P. Ryan signed a 2-year deal, which I was kind of surprised. So it seems like the running back room's kind of solidified for the next couple of years. But yeah, I'm excited to see him play. I think he's gonna, or at least I hope he has a few breakout plays, because I think he has that ability, especially at 4.5. I think he can. He seems like he's really tough to tackle, and then I was really impressed with the way he moves. His shiftiness. Like he can just chain, like he can juke someone in a phone booth, I think is the expression. Like he's really shifty.
Nice. So I think the only person that there are two people that gave the Bengals a B on their draft grade, and one of them was Pro Football Network. So they gave Bengals a B. And so they talk about Stewart, and again, like the lack of sacks is the big knock on Stewart. But like again, the thing is that if you have a guy with his athletic profile, if he had say like 10 sacks last season, he'd be a top 5 pick, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's actually what one of the Bengal scouts said about.
So it's just like, I mean, they're picking 17. It's not like they're picking 5, right? So I don't like the knock on the Stewart pick in terms of value.
Well, but also, there was a good chance that he was going to be picked like around the top 10 between picks, I would say 12 and, well, obviously through 17. So it wasn't just the Bengals. There was other teams that were interested in him.
So let's see. They're talking about the linebackers. Duo seems like a future with longtime starters still in the building. Okay.
That's again surface level analysis, because obviously Pratt will not be in the building.
Why's that? Did he get cut?
Yeah, they're expecting him to get cut. But I mean, I think right now they're still holding out, possibly for a trade. But he's inevitably going to get cut.
And then okay, so this guy likes Dylan Fairchild. Powerful, technically sound, versatile. This is like our level of analysis.
Yeah.
Jalen Rivers can play guard or tackle.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And then Taj Brooks, workhorse back, depth behind Chase Brown.
I do want to say something about Fairchild, though. I would say, obviously, I was hoping for Ratledge in the second round. But I did understand why immediately, fairly quickly, why they picked Knight. It makes sense, because it basically told me Pratt's gone for sure. And he's going to be a starter, basically. And there's
a pattern here, right? So the Bengals pick 3 players on offense, 3 players on defense. Every single player on offense that they talk about is good at pass protection, right? And then on defense, they drafted 3 people, and regardless of what anybody thinks of the players individually, all 3 of the players rate high on run defense. So it was like they went into the draft and they were like, look, we're going to get better on defense at stopping the run. And then on offense, we're going to get better at protecting Joe. Can't disagree with either of those notions, right? The Bengals only had 6 picks. It's not like you can fix and plug every single hole you have on the team, but it seemed like they were organized and they knew what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And they had a plan and they executed it. And I think like the details of, well, I thought, the guard you picked at 100, or I'm sorry, probably, what was that pick? 49, so like 81 or whatever. The guy you picked at 81, I had him raked at 110. It's like, come on. The Bengals aren't picking at 110. So.
But if that guy becomes a starter, like a solid starter for 6 years, it's not even going to matter, to your point.
Right. Or if he starts this year. If he's a solid starter next year, then good pick, right?
Yeah. But the more I learned about that was the pick at the moment where I was like, what? Because we were.
Yeah, no, for sure. I had not known about him, but I recognize the bias in the fact that, one, I didn't really know who to look at. And 2, I was heavily influenced by Pro Football Focus's list. They had him like at 140. And then when we watched his highlights, I was scared because he looked like he got pushed back a lot. And then I guess the Bengals kind of front office has been doing a media blitz to kind of smooth over things with their draft.
Well, what sold me on Fairchild was that, well, actually, I think even when we did our live reaction, we looked up his draft or his PFF grades, And when you looked at his grades were like actually pretty good. Like he
Yeah,
had
really good at pass blocking, not great at run blocking.
Well,
but then it's just like the
it was
Bengals
still
don't
above
really run the
average.
ball anyways.
His run blocking was still like slightly above average. It was just his pass blocking was like excellent.
Yeah, elite. Yeah, and it's just
And
like,
then-
protect Joe. Figure out everything else later.
But then I learned the Bengals did go down to Georgia and they did work out all the offensive line. Well, I guess the top three, I think it was their interior, both guards and center were draftable prospects, but they worked them out personally.
Mhm.
And then they found out that he played through an injury.
Right. I think that was big too, because I think that some of him looking like he wasn't able to hold his ground might have been because of the injury. So that kind of made me feel better.
Really what it comes down to, and the linchpin and all this, is that there was two different paths, right? You could have went with Ratledge in the second, and I think that would have been the most popular pick. And I think a lot of people, the perception of this draft would have been different. But I think the Bengals had a different vision in mind, and a lot of it had to do with Al Golden and what he was looking for. And at that point, but also I think too, and this is where people need to give the Bengals some credit, is in order to get certain players like a Fairchild, especially if he works out and he is the player who they think he is that they had the inside scoop. If you listen to someone or some of these interviews with the scouts, it takes time to develop relationships with some of these coaches at these different universities to get this information. Because like you only have a certain net that you can cast to get information, and you have to pick the right players to investigate, and you're only limited with the amount of scouts that you have. But they did the research, and they did the in-depth I guess research, and they looked into it, and they felt pretty comfortable. Plus, I feel like I can trust the defensive line coach because he's kind of got like the background. Like I think he was a wrestler, and I think he was it jujitsu or something? Like he was like a world, I guess world ranked, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like he's pretty good at what he like. I feel like he would know what strength is, and he said Fairchild was like a really strong player. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like I get why people don't have faith in the Bengals scouting or coaches sometimes, but at the same time, it's like you should have a little bit of faith and trust. And it's not like they're that bad at what they do, because if you look at the last couple of drafts, they've actually done better than what they did than worse. If you really go down the list, like they've had a lot of impact players, and I think this was a little bit of a mix. It's like you had to get the right impact players plus the right role players, and I think they did that. Plus, they didn't have to go for those high profile players like those what you like to see as far as like playmakers. I think that's really what a lot of people want, is like that quarterback or that receiver or whatever. But that was the big thing that the Bengals did in the offense or offseason, was keep T and Higgins for long term. And then there was news today that there is some good vibes coming out, or I guess that was a quote, with the Trey Hendrickson situation. So if they find a way to keep Trey and extend him before the season starts, because I still feel like he's going to hold out, that's a huge win. Like that, and then the draft makes even more sense, because it's like they didn't have to do that much. They just had to get the right players to impact the right spots. It didn't have to be like every pick has to be a home run, like some people are making it out to be.
Right. All right. So we're gonna react to this.
Let's do it.
All right.
So what do we react?
Make it small. Okay. So this is Bengals lead draft prognosticator, I guess, Joe Goodberry. I mean, puts out a lot of good stuff, but I think that a lot of the negativity is because people just take what Joe says as like gospel, right? So they're like, oh, well, Joe doesn't like it, Goodberry doesn't like it, so it must be bad, right? So I thought we could kind of react to it point by point.
To be fair, it's not just Joe that's saying a lot of this stuff, but I do think he is, like what he says here, or I guess what he's about to say is kind of like encapsulates the overall, I guess, consensus with a lot of the Bengals. what do we want to call them? Local
super fans,
Well,
poo-pooers.
I would say they're more than super fans. Like they're local analysts, I guess.
Yeah. The I guess kind of like us, but like people that other people know of. So tend to be kind of all in line with kind of like the sense of doom.
To the credit, I mean, they're in a position where they can reach quite a bit of people, so fair to them.
Oh, no, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying. Okay, so let's see here. I'll push play here.
Oh, wait, hold on. I can't hear anything. All right,
you
now
have me muted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Inside as much as I think, and I think they will. Wide nine them. Let them go wide. Let them rush through the tackle.
Okay, I don't think I have it in the right spot. All right.
Get off is good. So I want to turn that speed into power, which he has.
Okay. So I guess at the outset, I guess Goodberry's take is that the coaches at A&M don't know what they're doing. And that's why Shamar didn't get sacks. So like if Joe was coaching A&M, he would like change their scheme and then get more production out of Shamar Stewart. And my take on that is if he does what he did at Texas A&M, I think this is a good pick. And then if he develops some pass rush beyond what he did in college, it's a great pick. But even if he doesn't develop into an elite pass rusher, he's a really good defensive lineman.
I
just don't see the downside.
Did he say something about Texas A&M scheme?
Yeah, he said if he had him, he'd wide nine him. And all they did was line him up over tackle.
I feel like he did everything with him.
Yeah.
Like, and to be fair, I know I haven't seen as much film as some of the other people that done draft grades or player analysis or player grades or whatever.
Yeah.
But the few like pieces of film I've seen, they put him everywhere. So I'm sure at some point, yeah, they've tried something. That's another thing. It's just like I'm curious to know like how much film some of these graders actually watched, because I know if you do it through YouTube, because you can search a player versus a specific team, and you can like watch all their plays that way. But that's only like 3 or 4 games, right? They're not going to have all the actual games,
right?
Plus, NFL scouts, believe it or not,
I don't believe it.
And I actually heard this more recently through one of the interviews that they had. But basically, they also watch practice film. Like they get access to that too. So they get a lot of stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Not like a very small surface level, view of whatever's going on. So yeah, it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
All right. Did we find the right spot?
Like if you're asking me, you give me a player, I'm a coach, right? And the personnel people draft Shamar Stewart. I'm like, all right, here's what we do. And that's my plan. And that's how I maximize that guy. And I expect Bengals to do very similar things the way they were speaking about him. So, I'm not high on the pick. I think that's too much risk. Ideally, in the first round, I want a guy who has a path to playing time. Shamar Stewart does.
Right. So, again, he's knocking it because he doesn't have a path to playing time. It's like, guy's going to play. I don't know what Bengals team
I think
anybody watched last year, but Shamar Stewart's going to play. He's going to play a lot because he can stop the run.
I think he did.
Wasn't that their weakness?
No, I did think he said that he did have a path to playing time.
Yeah. Okay, he said it, but he said it with a tone as if he didn't.
Oh, okay. I took it the other way. I thought it was weird because this part where because it's like he gives 5 positives and then
no, he gives the 5 things he's looking for, right? And the one is path to playing time, and he's just like, okay, fine, he's going to play, but, and then he goes on to 2. So let's pick it up at 2, I guess.
Oh, did I do the wrong one here?
This is going to make me look terrible if I say his name wrong more than twice. All right, Shamar Stewart has a path to playing time. I want a guy that's young. Shamar Stewart's young. Great. I want a guy that's athletic. Shamar Stewart's athletic. The other things are,
Okay. So, He's going to play. He's young. Is he athletic? Basically, his athletic profile maps to like elite dudes, right? So clearly the guy's athletic, right? So far, everything's like first round pick, right?
So far, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all right.
Want a guy who's not injured? Great. Shamar Stewart's not injured.
Okay. So we agree there. Shamar Stewart is not injured.
As far as we know.
Far, yeah, it is the Bengals picking, so you never know. He could be like injured, and they just didn't notice.
Well, I think that's the whole reason why Jihad Campbell slid, was that he still needs to get surgery.
Hey, I applaud the Bengals for not picking hurt players, because every time they do that, in recent memory, they've got completely burned by it. So with the Bengals' luck, if they picked a guy in the first round that was hurt, he'd be out for like 4 years.
I want good character. Check for Shamar Stewart. Again, the only thing I want past that is really good tape, which I can't give that.
Okay. So he wants good tape. And again, we didn't watch any tape. We just watched highlights. But from my perspective, I thought he looked good. You know? I mean, if you're picking at 17, you're just not going to get a guy with that size, that speed, that strength that got like 50 sacks or got 10 sacks or 20. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be some knock on the guy. And the knock that I would rather have is not like, oh, he's bad character, or oh, he's injured, or he's not a good athlete, right? Because production in terms of like stats, right? Like statistics in general, right? People, well, from my perspective, statistics are just used for comparison, right? If you see a stat, it alerts you to look at it in more detail. And when I look at highlights of Shamar Stewart playing, the guy looks like a freak show in terms of athleticism, and he looks like a guy that other teams scheme against. Like, you see so many plays running away from him. You see, like, he's making an impact on the field. He's not a guy that is like taking plays off, or a guy that doesn't try hard.
Well, it's interesting too, because again, another thing one of the scouts said was that the Texas A&M defense, like front seven as a whole, is pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they were, in general, creating a lot of pressure quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So what they noticed was a lot of offenses that played against Texas A&M created really quick passing schemes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I also kind of noticed that with his highlights, because it's like, damn, like I feel like a lot of teams that they played against were like pretty efficient in getting the ball out. Like I feel like that's very, like, which is interesting, because like that's very important to have in the NFL, because the NFL does the same thing essentially. I mean, the Bengals are pretty good at it too. Just wearing out the defense in general, because if you get the ball out fast enough in the right route, whatever, eventually it's going to wear out the defense, because they're constantly rushing as quickly as they can, basically for nothing. But yeah, it was just, I didn't really hear any of those I guess people that were negative about the draft kind of address some of those things, as far as like, well, maybe part of the reason why he didn't have some of his numbers was that in general their defense was really good, and a lot of offensives prepared for that and had really quick schemes. So
right, and with scheme in mind, the Bengals play a lot of games against Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. A lot of plays against those quarterbacks are not going to be sacks. They're going to be like chasing the guy down from behind, and instead of him making a first down, maybe you get him on a third down. So in terms of having a guy with the makeup that could chase down those guys, I mean, this guy to me fits the bill, right? You know, Like instead of that play where Osai got to Mahomes late and got the flag after the first down, right? Shamar Stewart would get there 2 steps earlier and not get the penalty, or maybe stop him before he got the first down. You know, it's just like to have that kind of athleticism, even if you're not necessarily getting sacks, to be able to chase down these running quarterbacks and limit their gains, and have like a guy that's just, you know, can bring a load when he arrives at the point of contact. I think that's kind of an underrated aspect of what Shamar Stewart can do for the Bengals defense.
Well, another thing I noticed with his pressures was that if you put it in a vacuum, like he's seemingly winning his battle. And if you put that, what he's doing in college in the NFL, like you're going to get more production one way or another, whether it's him or another player, because in general,
right,
in the NFL, the pocket's going to collapse much quicker. And they're not, because a lot of plays where he like basically pushed the offensive player to the quarterback, there was like an alley or like a lane for the quarterback to run out. And in general, unless you're like Lamar Jackson or like someone that's really quick in the pocket, most of his quarterbacks are not going to be able to run out of that. And he's going to, like his effect is going to, other people are going to cash in on it just because he's going to be able to push them into what they're doing. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Oh, sorry. Turn off the sound.
Don't rely on the numbers. Don't agree that Shamar Stewart has good tape. I graded him on tape as a late second round pick. And the productions of a third, fourth rounder. So that's why I'm scary of this pick. He has all those other 5 things, but tape and production, I kind of need those in the first round, and which is why I wouldn't have drafted him at that spot. Round 2 comes around now.
So, second round tape, fourth round production. I don't know, man. I just don't see it that way, I guess is the way I put it. I think his highlights, he looks freakishly athletic.
What does that even mean?
What?
Second round tape, fourth round production?
Yeah.
Isn't watching tape part of knowing what the production is? So, I guess I'm confused how you separate the two.
I think he's talking sacks. He's really caught up on the sack number and the number of tackles, right?
Because I feel like if you watch the tape and you feel like he's a second rounder, then he technically has second round production because you're watching the production. Or am I missing something?
Maybe no. I think you're making a good point. Like, how's that different, right?
Like
tape and production are the same, one and the same, right? I guess I interpreted stats as production, but then it's just like I don't think that his.
If you're
stats,
watching the tape, you're watching the stats. That's
but I'm just saying, like, to me, the stats say do not draft at all, right?
Yeah.
Like if you got a defensive end that has 1 sack or 1.5 sacks in a season, it's like, okay, this guy isn't draftable.
Yeah. Okay, you're probably right. I think that's what you're saying, but yes, that's correct.
But I like, to me, you see his testing, you're like, who is this guy? And they're like, 1 sack. What's up with that? Is he lazy? And then you watch the tape. You watch the YouTube highlights for 5 minutes. You're just like, this guy is bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody else, and everybody's running away from him.
Mm-hmm. And he's pushing people back like crazy.
Yeah, and he's just taking left tackles and pushing them right into the quarterback's lap. And it's just like, oh, he doesn't have a lot of moves. He just like bulldozes the left tackle into the quarterback on every single play. And it's just like, I'd take that, you know? Yeah, that's a good start.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you put him right next to Hendrickson, and like, someone's gonna win. Right.
And the other thing though is that, like, if he's playing with Hendrickson, he's going to learn. If he's guys playing in the NFL, they're going to learn some more moves, right?
And he's actually
his
out of all the defensive ends, I think he has more of the same play style as Hendrickson, where he like because mainly Hendrickson's got that like that power rush.
yeah.
Sometimes he dips his shoulder a little bit, but he mainly is got like a really strong bull rush, and he's really quick. Maybe it's a bend, but like he does like the little short shoulder thing. You know what I mean? Like where he's just like quicker, but also has enough strength to just kind of like pin his body against the defensive tackle or offensive tackle and like push him to the side basically, and still get to the quarterback. But yeah, like Hendrickson's kind of limited in his moves versus like some other defensive ends, but I think you can really learn from him because I feel like they'll probably have about the same strength.
Yeah. But the other thing is that like to be an elite defensive lineman, you don't have to have like 10 sacks a season. You know? Like if he gets 5 or 6 sacks, but it's just like just a disruptive force
or if he has like a pretty good amount of tackle for losses. Like to me, those are just like sacks. Anything that's behind
like pass deflections. I just think that there's so many more things that a defensive lineman can do other than just this guy isn't going to be an elite pass rusher, therefore he's not an elite defensive end. It's like, no, that's just not true.
Yeah, because like you'll have those plays where the defensive end or the defensive player just gets to the quarterback where it messes up the pass just enough to where it gets intercepted.
You know who he makes, like this line of conversation makes me think of Justin Smith. You remember when he played for the Bengals, how like he was never a 10 sack guy, but he was just like such a good defensive lineman. And then he went to San Francisco. I think he had a couple seasons in San Francisco where he might have gotten 10 sacks. But like primarily he was just a really good run defender.
He was an ox.
Yeah, and could generate some push, you know, to collapse the pocket a little bit to help the other guy get sacks because he's keeping the quarterback kind of, you know, disrupting the pocket to help the other pass rusher, right? So he's a very complimentary player. So like getting those sorts of attributes from a guy at the end of the first round, second half of the first round, to me it's a good value pick. It's hard to find guys that can play defensive line consistently in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's good value too because even if Hendrickson plays, there's other positions you can play on the line, so you don't take a loss. Like he's got a path to the field, and then especially if they do more like 3-4 looks, I feel like there's a lot you can do with him, with that as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think he's gonna play right away.
Oh, for sure.
He's gonna play a lot right away.
Oh yeah.
Let's see, trying to figure out how to close that. That's all I wanted to talk about on the Goodberry thing. You have anything else you want to talk about?
No, and yeah, and really, it wasn't just Joe, like we said. It was other people basically saying the same thing.
Well, I mean, I think I think that so many people in like the Cincinnati media, when it comes to covering the Bengals, just follow Joe Goodberry's lead. So I think that a lot of the negativity is just because Joe Goodberry is not 100% on board with what the Bengals did. So I think a lot of people just copy his stuff and just kind of parrot it back. I mean, I'm not knocking Goodberry for that. I'm knocking everybody else. I mean, because he's entitled to his opinion. I don't think his opinion's like way off base. I just disagree with it.
And he may have said this, like with him and many others. I just wish they would be a little bit more like, okay, I can see where they're coming from, and maybe they do have enough resources. Like they did their research, they done their homework. Like they had good enough reasons to pick the players at the rounds that they did. And when I was looking up, because I had mentioned it before, Clint Bowling, because I feel like that's what they're really looking to get out of Fairchild. I mean, but I looked it up. Bowling was drafted in the 4th round, and he was a starter for like 7 or 8 years for the Bengals. So, yeah, I mean, if we can get a player like that in this draft, especially on the offensive line, that would go a long way. And then I don't know. I felt like they picked the right players for the Bengals, and obviously, and they even said they could have went different routes, and they've had all these different scenarios. But with the way the draft was going and what they were looking to accomplish, they did what they did because it made the most sense. And I think the reason why they went with the linebacker in the second round, besides the offensive lineman, is that they just in general had the linebacker rated higher and had more value. And I even feel like I probably overrated Ratledge a little bit, because when we did a lot of the mock simulators, like he was always a third round pick. And then I think really what happened was he tested out really well, and he created a lot of good buzz around draft time. So I think a lot of Bengals fans, including myself, was like, okay, well, if you really want him, you take him in the second round, because it's going to be worth it, even if he's kind of got maybe a high third round pick grade or whatever, maybe low second round. If you get a starter, it's worth it. But what you don't take account of is that, well, if you can get a same quality player in the third round, then that's still really good value, right?
Yeah.
But you also get a starting linebacker who you feel you can depend on, because he's going to have to play a lot. He's going to have to learn a lot. I don't think it's just, you can't just put anyone in that role.
Yeah. And the other thing I don't like is when people use phrases like 5-year starter or get caught up in the age of a player, because to me, the only thing that you should compare value in terms of picks is production under the rookie contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this guy's a 10-year starter, it's yeah, but the draft only counts for the first 5 years if he's a first rounder.
Right.
So if you're drafting a linebacker in the second round and he starts immediately and you get starter level production out of that player for 4 years, then it's worth the second round pick, because the 5th year you got to pay fair market value for the player, and it no longer has anything to do with the draft, because then you're just talking about free agent. You can go sign a free agent for full value.
I
right?
wasn't on for me, I wanted Pratt to stay, even with the season he had last year. But there were so many people ready to move on from him and all that. And then I find it kind of weird that they get a player that's almost identical to what he does, or his frame.
Mm-hmm.
But just say if you get a Pratt type player, but someone that can tackle a little bit better, that in itself made the pick worth it, right? Because it was it wasn't that Pratt was extremely bad player. It was just he missed a lot of tackles. And if you get a player that doesn't miss as many tackles, that can change a lot of those outcomes of outcomes of those close games. And we only needed to win one more game last year, and we would have made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it all has a cumulative effect. So if you just get a little bit more sound player, but I think it's more than just on the field stuff. I think there was more off the field stuff too. I get a sense that maybe Pratt and Golden didn't really gelled together.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the Bengals did it the right way. Well, I mean, obviously you could assign a linebacker and pay a little bit more money, but I think, and we kind of talked about this before, it's in order to be able to pay all the people that you're paying, you have to draft well for defensive players and get a lot of good, decent to really good players on rookie contracts in order.
I mean, you got to get starters out of the draft in order to make the salary cap numbers work.
Yep. So by cutting,
even if it's only as good of a player, or maybe even slightly worse of a player, the fact that you're getting them on a rookie deal for defense makes it so that you can afford wide receivers on offense, right? You have to get production out of draft picks in order to be able to pay so much money to wide receivers.
It was interesting too, because the I've seen people kind of upset because like you said, like, oh, the 25-year-old player, what a waste, blah blah blah. But it's like if they come in and they play well and as a quality starter, it's worth it for sure. Especially at linebacker. That was what we're
Right.
kind of like. If we get a little bit better production paired with Wilson, that makes a big difference. But
Yeah.
back to your point, what you said earlier, and I think the vision was they wanted dynamic players in the front seven
Mm-hmm.
and people that can tackle well
Yeah.
and
They
create
want to stop the
pressure.
run.
Yeah, which is perfect in the AFC North.
Yeah. And it's how teams play the Bengals, right? They try to hold the ball and run the ball to keep the ball away from Joe Burrow because they know if they get into like a scoring shootout that it favors the Bengals. So the way you beat the Bengals is you try to limit possessions, you know. And a lot of the elite quarterbacks in our conference run. So you got to have guys that can tackle them when they don't throw it.
I also still hold out a little hope that the Bengals still will go for a veteran offensive guard.
Yeah.
I still think they have a little bit of time. I think part of it is, they're waiting to cut Pratt. I still think maybe they might, at the very least, approach Volson to see if he'll restructure his contract. Otherwise, I think Volson's cut. I don't think he's
Really?
worth. Yeah, they can save him as $3 million. He's
Yeah,
definitely
but don't you think somebody would trade for him?
Volson.
Yeah.
If they could, then we should do it right now. Why are we waiting?
I don't know.
Because it's like I think it's $6 million with Pratt and $3 million with Volson, possibly another $1 million or $2 million Moss if they happen to cut him. So like they can create cap space to get that guard, or maybe possibly help out with the Hendrickson contract. Plus, I know there's people out there saying, "Oh, you don't need to do that. The Bengals have enough money." But come on, it's the Bengals. I mean, they've already spent a lot of money already.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the same cash flow as some of these other teams. Yeah, could they go out and maybe get a loan or whatever they need to do to make it happen? I'm sure they can, but if they don't have to, they're not going to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still kind of torn in between because obviously as a fan, I want them to do as much as possible to try to win a championship or whatever. But at the same time, it's not my money. And maybe if I was in that position and I had that much money, obligated to someone, I think I would probably be a little bit hesitant too, I can kind of see, and it's not the Bengals too that operates this way. There's a few other teams, like even the Steelers are kind of like the Bengals when it comes to how they do contracts and stuff like that. But also I do think they need to give up a minority stake, because it is getting to that point where, because you can fudge with the cap so much and kick the can down the road, it is still becoming more of an advantage with those bigger, with those teams that have like more cash flow and, their owner actually owns $1 billion company.
Yeah.
So they can like afford to do some of the stuff. So I do think they need to kind of do certain things to keep it a little bit competitive, because it's like the fact that the Browns can keep doing what they're doing is just insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we know who Volson is, and I think we know that he's not a fit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I wouldn't mind him as a backup or like emergency guard, but not at $3 million. Like, he would maybe like a veteran minimum. But I think they've already drafted his replacement, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, if you cut him, then you could sign a veteran.
Yeah, because like going into the draft, if you were just looking at the roster, like to me, it was fairly clear that they were gonna double dip at offensive line, and that's even still if you sign like a veteran guard. So they still have room to do it, which I still think they're probably looking to it. I just think the Bengals are kind of an organization where they kind of focus on one thing at a time, and it feels like they're probably going to start making some of those cuts that we've kind of speculated about, as far as like Pratt and possibly Volson.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you're going to see a little bit more action. And then I think they're probably going to want to settle the Hendrickson contract first if they can.
Yeah, I can see them doing that first and then worrying
Then get
about the guard.
Yeah, because then it's just like at that point, whatever
Then
money
you're
you have
done.
left, to spend it. Whatever money you have left, whether it's like 3 or 4 million,
Hmm.
that's going to be your guard that you can afford,
Yeah.
and they'll have that option. Because there's still like, I want to say like 3 to 5 guards that I'd be willing to take,
Hmm.
and I think they all range from like 3 to maybe 7 million a year. So I think that's probably what it's going to come down to. It's just get that Hendrickson contract settled, and then whatever you have left, hopefully you can get a quality guard, and then I would feel really good going into the season. And then not
agree.
to say I don't like the players that they drafted, but it's just like, come on, it's Joe Burrow. You can't have enough good offensive linemen.
Yeah, I like the players that they drafted, but yeah, get a guy that could play right away who's shown in the NFL, and if the guy you drafted is better than the vet, then good. And if not, you're fine, right?
Yep. Did you want to? I feel like the only pick we really didn't get to talk about that much was I guess the linebacker from Clemson, Simmons, and then
Mm-hmm.
the offensive lineman from Miami, which I think the offensive tackle, I can't think of his name right now. Actually, I have it right here. Jalen Rivers. A lot of people like that pick. That was like the value pick for most people I saw. But it seemed like there was a lot of quality offensive linemen in this draft. Not to say like all of them are starter quality, but a lot of good backups or potential future starters in this year's draft. But no, he definitely fit the bill because he's got the versatility. I think they said he even played center a little bit.
Yeah.
But a few highlights that I've seen of him, I like his feet. He makes blocking look easy sometimes in terms of just getting his feet in the right place and just standing in front of the defender. And again, it's probably his highlights. I didn't really see some of his negative plays. But thinking about it, I did rewatch. There was a film from the Senior Bowl where it was the defensive lineman versus the offensive lineman.
Yeah.
And I was trying to watch through it to see if some of the Bengals players were there, and there Jalen Rivers was there, and actually I don't think Fairchild was there. I feel like I was watching someone else, but I was trying to pay attention to Rivers as well, and I noticed there were a few times where he did get beat by the inside quick move. I was like, ugh. That kind of reminded me of Volson a little bit,
Yeah,
but
Volson-esque.
but it's weird. But based off all of people that did the pass blocking grades, yeah, we got the guards that can do really well in pass blocking. So we'll see. But I did notice he did get beat by some quick moves. I was like, ugh, that's gave me flashbacks of Volson or even Kappa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess did you want to talk about anything else?
No, I'm good, man.
All right.
Good job.
Close it out. All right, let me figure out how to close this out.
Okay, I'll do it again.
You have to do one more time. All right.
Ha.